Hi, everybody. Welcome to Capital to the Coast BNI. My name is Mike Manning. Each week, we bring you a local small business success story anywhere from the Triangle to the Coast. And that includes all the towns in between. If you are not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our little slice of heaven here between the Triangle and the Coast, we have 41 chapters that meet every week. And our goal is to help each other grow our businesses. And our local small business success story this week is Anne Marie Devanney with Religious Community Services, where she is the Chief Communications Officer. She is in business in the Burn in New Bern, North Carolina. So if you are in the New Bern area and you want to meet with some professionals on Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. at the Elks Club on Pine Tree Drive, please do. Anne Marie is the secretary treasurer in the chapter. Anne Marie, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you today. I was chatting with a co-member of your chapter yesterday via text, and I don't think an hour is going to be enough. So we're going to get started here, right? So Anne Marie holds the nonprofit seat in BNI. And if you're not familiar with BNI, each of us hold a seat: the carpet cleaning seat, the residential realtor seat. The goal, it's seat exclusive organization, so you can build relationships. Prior to, so this is her second stint with Religious Community Services in New Bern. She right now is the chief communications officer, held previous roles with program manager and community engagement manager. So let's start off with what brought you back to religious community services.
Sure. You can take the girl out of the nonprofit, but you can't take the nonprofit out of the
Yeah.
girl. Took a break to really see what other opportunities were out there. When I left the first time, it was because someone had pursued me to fill a role on their team. And the same thing happened when I came back to RCS. There's a new director. We had worked together previously, and she said, "Would you consider coming back?" And really, it sounds cliche, but she made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And really, my heart's been in the nonprofit sector for my entire life. And so it was time to come home.
Well, and it's interesting the way that happened, the way you explained it, because it's okay to look, because sometimes you have to rule out, yeah, this isn't for me. And you keep coming back to who you really are, which is at your core, you're a helper. And you evidently found a wonderful organization to be a helper in, haven't you?
For sure. Yeah, and I think what you said, leaving, I didn't know I needed a break from the nonprofit
Mhm.
sector. So I'd worked for Curtis Media Group in the interim between my first stint and second stint with RCS. I'll just use the abbreviated term for this interview.
Mhm.
I didn't know I needed a break from the nonprofit sector. And so going into media and marketing was the break that I needed. But I've also found now that I'm back in the nonprofit sector, that time away allowed me to hone my professional skills, my networking skills, just things that I wouldn't have been able to hone had I stayed in the nonprofit world. So there was definitely a benefit to stepping away. And now I feel like I'm even better at the role that I'm in than I would have been probably 5 years ago.
In most of business, which is for profit, we have traditional ways to grow a book of business. We're looking for new clients, we're looking for this, that, and the other. But in the nonprofit world, you guys are looking for a number of different things.
Yeah. And our organization in particular, it's anywhere from hard donations. So we address food and housing insecurity and clothing insecurity. So people can donate food, clothing, they can donate their time. As all nonprofits, we always welcome cash
Mhm.
donations and things of that nature. But yeah, when it comes to a nonprofit organization, what we're looking for is vast. Which for me it makes it exciting because no 2 days look the
Yeah.
same.
And in your role, though, your job is not only to help get the word out to get those resources, but just kind of jumping knee deep into the community.
Yeah, my a large part of my role really is just to be as invested in the community as possible. So oftentimes we're doing great work here, and if we don't tell people about it, then the next thing is on their radar. So in nonprofit, especially in New Bern and Craven County, there are a number of nonprofits that need the community's support. So it's important in my role to make sure that we stay top of mind, just like any other, I mean, just like any for-profit business, top of mind awareness is key. Just in my situation, not promoting a certain product, I'm keeping stories top of mind. I'm keeping impact top of mind, and then that draws people into the mission, the programs, the services, get people to volunteer. And that's really where we like to start. That's the beginning of our donor cycle. Start with volunteerism, and as people fall in love with the mission, then they're naturally going to give. And that's, I think, a lot of people can kind of find similarities between the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector in that regard. People don't always buy a product the first time you show it to
Mm.
them. You got to get them intrigued, tell them why it matters, and that's how you get clients. And it's the same for us.
I would imagine with the new people you bring on that are at one of your events or donate something and get a very nice handwritten note back, that kind of changes their thought process and eventually will change their life the way they spend more time with you.
For sure. And one of our biggest things is when people do make those donations or do have that first point of entry. The thing that I like to promote, and I've even been doing it in BNI, I don't have any specific asks when it comes to the weekly meeting. The biggest thing I'm promoting is come and take a tour. Our facility takes up an entire city block. So it's a vast campus where there's a lot of programs and services happening. And so really, just showing people where impact happens, I think is really important. Actually, I have a one-to-one this afternoon with a fellow member, and we're going to tour the campus and just show him what we do here. And he wants to see how his church can help support the organization and vice versa. So yeah, it's very exciting.
And who's your one-to-one with?
Mike Reynolds, and so
Oh, I like
he,
him. He is
for
sharp.
people that don't know Mike, he holds our pressure washing seat.
Mhm.
But as people, find, it's not just about the seat people hold, it's where they're connected in the community. So Mike's also a part of a very big church in the community, Seastone Church in James City. And so they're very much about meeting people where they are and helping. And so I'm really excited to see how he and I can partner. And that connection would have never happened without BNI.
Yeah, he's on my list. I've got, I do this every week, so he's on my list. He is a sharp young man.
Yeah, he is. It's definitely an asset to the team. Not just for, the skills he brings as a pressure washer and his attention to detail, but
Mm.
he is definitely a leader. He's on the leadership team. Definitely brings a lot to the
Right.
table. Very fortunate to know him.
What is the name of his company?
Pro Wash Pressure Washing.
All right, folks, if you're in the New Bern area, you need some good work done, give Mike a call.
Look him up
Um,
on Facebook. You'll see
yep.
before and afters, and he
Oh,
does
yeah.
incredible work.
A sharp kid, and I say kid and all that with ultimate respect, but because
Yeah,
I got 2 sons older than him. So,
comparatively, right?
a lot of times in nonprofits, we don't really talk competitors. In the profit world, everybody's got them. But in yours, a lot of nonprofits do some of the things you do. What are kind of the conversations you get into that separates you from what some of the other folks that are doing very good work in the New Bern, Craven County area?
Yeah. Um, wow. So I could take that question in so many different um avenues. I think when we talk about competition, at least in this sector, the nonprofit community is very different than you probably would see in the Triangle or other parts of the state. We're really going after the same dollars. So I think that's where competition kind of comes in, especially for sponsorships. What I do enjoy though about New Bern is there is really a sense of collaboration. So when it comes to food insecurity and housing insecurity, that's the lane that we try to stay in. If there are other services that people need, maybe it's being physical. We'll refer them to the Twin Rivers YMCA where they can apply for a scholarship and get a gym membership. We're not trying to meet that need. Um, People often, when they're experiencing homelessness and food insecurity, they're not always having access to education and
Mm,
employment. We don't try to do that. We refer them to partners at the community college or NC Works. So I think in this market, it's really important that we focus on how we can collaborate, um, provide all the resources that one might need to be self-sufficient, to then turn into a more productive member of society. Um, and then remember that while dollars are limited, everyone has what speaks to them, at least from a donor
mm,
standpoint. Um, Donors have things that align with their mission in life, their values, their faith. And so making sure that we remember there are donors out there for everyone for those dollars. So I think that answers your
mhm.
question.
Yep, no, exactly, because not many of us have ever been in the nonprofit world, and we don't stop to think about there are many organizations helping people, and
Yeah.
no surprise that you guys do talk with each other and just try to help the community, which I like that a lot. What is a normal or average work week like for you since you have many missions each week, and I know that changes?
Yeah. Um, so just if I glance up at my calendar, this morning I met with team members to go over our volunteer management system that I'll be helping with. So even though I don't work directly with volunteers, it is a part of communication. So that was this morning. This afternoon, I'm going to meet with a caterer for an upcoming event that we're planning. We have an annual gala. So meeting with a caterer this afternoon. But at the end of the week, I have an event called Empty Bowls. And a quick plug if people are in New Bern and
Please
looking
do.
for a meal, we do a partnering event. And this also piggybacks to the last question. So we partner with Craven Arts Council, who's all about making New Bern beautiful. So we fight hunger and support the arts with Empty Bowls. And we meet at Temple Church, and people with their tickets can get a handcrafted bowl and then two bowls of soup from local restaurants and church groups. So all of that to say, my week is very vast. I'll have BNI in the middle of the week, so a lot of meetings, a lot of planning. Yeah, and then even but like then I look at my calendar next week, and the director and I will be in DC for something called Hill Day, where we're going
Yep.
to approach our state legislators to talk about how we can advocate for programs and services for those youth that are experiencing homelessness. So,
Mm.
um, another reason why I just love this job. No 2 days look the same. So that's kind of a snippet into the last 2 weeks of February for me. Anywhere from planning a future event,
Mm.
hosting an event this week, going to a legislative event next week. So
Mm.
yeah, it keeps me busy. I love it.
So you like moving at 100 miles an hour, don't you?
I do not like being at a desk, for purposes like this is I love I'm networking now, right?
Yes,
So,
yes.
anytime I can be with other people, I'm at my best. If you were to put me in an office for 8 hours and
Yeah,
tell me to work by myself, I
yeah.
would you'd probably find me in the fetal position at the end of the day because I need to be with people. That's why
I'm
I love BNI.
I'm with you on that, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're in the RCS offices right now.
Yeah.
I understand you also have a second office in town. Do tell.
So, for those that know and love me, know that I love Grandma Brew. It's a coffee shop, locally owned coffee shop. Within minutes, I can walk to it from my house. And if I want it on a warm day, I can walk there from the office. But um, it's just this lovely, it's been open for several years now, but it's just, I love coffee, but more so, I love the atmosphere. And I do all my one to ones there. And a lot of people, I have to say, I've probably brought a lot of business to Crema Brew because of BNI, because it's one of those. I probably seem too young to reference Cheers, but for me, that's what I think of. Like I think of Cheers
Very
when I
good.
think of Crema Brew, where everybody knows your name.
Yep.
So yeah, I want to be an honorary member of their staff, but they won't let me yet. So hopefully, maybe when I retire, I can be a barista slash
Ah.
baker in their kitchen. But I've got a lot of years until retirement.
Do they have the Anne Marie table for whenever you walk in?
There's not a placard yet. But I will share one story. So there was one day that I came in and the owner, Donovan, was having his lunch at a table that I like to use, and he asked if I wanted, my table. And even the owner, took his lunch elsewhere. So I guess I have a table.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
All right, so your mission then is you have 18, 20 different things going on, meeting people, getting volunteers, events, things like that.
Yeah.
When you left there when you left there to go to Curtis Media,
Yeah.
was that a complete hard stop and a brand new start for growing a book of business?
For growing a book of business, yeah, a lot of transferable skills I was able to take with me, but yeah, there wasn't really I didn't bring people from RCS to the radio station. I think just being involved in the community, being involved in the chamber and other networking opportunities. And I joined BNI as Curtis Media as
Mhm.
the radio rep. Um, but yeah, I was able to inherit a couple of accounts when I got there. They were gracious enough to give me because I replaced someone who went on maternity leave and wasn't coming back. So I got her book of business, but really had to build it myself. So yeah.
What'd you learn about that? How that was different from RCS and even the Salvation Army,
Mm.
which you were there before?
I think the biggest difference for me was that I always felt like I was
Mhm.
asking for money for myself. Um, People know that they need to advertise, but at the end of the day, when someone in a commission-based job is approaching them,
Mhm.
it's kind of battling those misnomers, that I wasn't there just to make a sales call. Um, so I think that was the hardest thing for me because when you approach people to give money for a nonprofit, you're pulling at their heartstrings and
Yes.
saying, no one wants people in their community to be hungry, right? No one
Mhm.
wants people to be homeless. So the ask is a little bit easier because people are supporting um, those bigger humanitarian needs, but then calling on someone to share a piece of their marketing pie
Mhm.
with me, it was a little bit more difficult. And then those are regular asks, right? So in a commission based radio job, um, as opposed to nonprofit. For nonprofit, hey, will you sponsor this event? It
Mhm.
happens once a year. I'm not coming to them repeatedly for business. Whereas with radio, I'm trying to make sure that they're top of mind and on radio every month. So I think that's the biggest difference. It was just ongoing, and convincing people to invest in themselves
Mhm.
is also difficult. I think sometimes.
And it probably took, what, 5 or 6 meetings/decisions for me to decide to spend money with you versus if you come to me, "Hey, can you sponsor this event or a table at this event?" I'm probably a quicker yes.
Yeah. And sometimes, especially when you have events that are well known in the community, like
Mhm.
this one coming up on Friday, the ask is almost really simple because it's an established
Yeah.
event. And so people are almost anticipating the ask. So as long as you don't get to them too late where they've already spent their money, um, typically it's easier to get someone to say yes once or twice. But yeah, you've got to stay persistent when it comes to
Yes.
radio and advertising. Even though people know that they need to do it and they know they need multiple funnels,
Mhm.
still convincing them and getting. I think the thing too is getting to the decision maker.
Yeah.
That's no different in both sectors. That is something very similar. Is you got to make sure you know who the person is that can write the check.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, you got to make sure you're getting to the person who can say yes.
And what transferable skills in that world came with you back to RCS that you applied?
That I'm applying now
Yeah.
to okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think I'm a little bit more business savvy.
Mm.
So I think there's more confidence in knowing that people want to give. I think I have a better idea of how much people can give, because I could see how much people were investing in their advertising. um, I have a better sense of budgets and what fish to go after, who's a better fit for which sponsorship
Yeah.
level, what event is a better fit. Getting to know businesses better from the for-profit sector, I think, is really helpful, coming back into this role. And then also I'm handling the website, social media, So not just events, but just making sure we're top of mind when it comes to our engagement. And so also seeing what marketing and advertising looks like in the
Mhm.
business sector and stealing some tips and tricks um, there. And actually, and this is another BNI connection. They haven't taken the seat, but through through my work at Curtis Media, got to know a gentleman that does marketing and advertising, and his role for the business he works for didn't really get a lot of business from him for radio, but made a really good connection. And now he has updated our website. We're getting ready to finalize it, but he's done that as an in-kind donation. For anybody listening that doesn't know much about in-kind donation, he's giving us his professional skills and labor at no cost to the organization. So
Nice.
I think making those relationships outside is also has been very helpful in this seat with RCS now because I know how to farm things out and trade things. That's been really great.
And it matters. I mean, that you can cover more ground doing that way. And again, people are we can give time
Yeah.
a lot easier than we can give money, depending on and granted, giving in kind is still it's not revenue lost, but it's still I know it makes them feel good when they're able to do trades like this.
Yeah, and it saves the organization money, and
Mhm.
then at the end of the day, when people visit our website, his marketing company is gonna be listed on the bottom of every page, and
Yep.
so that's advertising for him, and so who knows who's gonna see our website, love the work that he's done, and because we've worked together, that might down the line, give him business that he wouldn't have had otherwise,
Mhm.
and I use him for, he's gonna be a substitute for me in March,
Okay.
when I go on vacation, so, yeah, everything kind of overlaps, and I love that.
I hope this is gonna be a week-long cruise somewhere.
Actually, we're going to Canada.
Oh,
My sister-in-law, so yeah, spring break, it'll feel like winter break
yeah.
instead 'cause,
Yep.
but my husband's sister married a Canadian. And we haven't seen her since the wedding in 22. So it was fall of 22 when she got married, but they just had their first baby in
Nice.
November. And so, yeah, we get to spend a week in Ottawa. And it'll be spring in theory.
Okay.
So
Yep.
it'll still be winter, but it'll be winter in Canada. So I think it'll be
Yep.
prettier.
And this is your chance to let the baby know that you will always be their favorite aunt. Yeah.
And the only one though, because her husband doesn't have any
Mhm.
sisters.
Okay.
And I don't think they're no, maybe one's married. But the husband doesn't have any sisters, and Mark's other sibling is a boy. So
Okay.
I get to be the one and only favorite aunt.
There you go. We like that.
Same thing I say to my son. He's my favorite son, and he reminds me I'm your only son.
Yeah. Well, I tell my we have 2 boys, and I've told them for years, every now and then I'll say, "Oh, they're Travis and Cameron." Like, "Oh, Travis, you're my favorite." And Cameron will go, "What about me?" I said, "Well, look what your brother just did for me. He's the favorite right now."
It depends on the day.
I know. What have you done for me lately? So if I am Mike, the resident of New Bern, versus Mike, the business owner, and Anne Marie
Mm.
calls me for whatever reason, who are you likely to hear back from quicker?
Hmm. That's a really good question. Um, Probably the resident.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I know at Curtis when you're with Curtis Media, and this is not a knock on Curtis Media, it's just the corporate
No.
world,
Yeah.
I'll get to that. It's Monday, let me and yeah, so I would imagine when you call, especially people that have been part of RCS, and you're calling to remind me, "Hey, Mike, just wanna let you know, event's coming up again. Oh, we also have this." I'm probably either taking your phone call or I'm getting back to you within 24 hours.
For sure. Um, and but under our new leadership too, I think our model is really healthy where because there was an interim director, we're just making sure right now to thank people
Mhm,
for their support over the years. Remind them to come, like I said earlier, come for a tour, see how things have changed, how we're expanding programs and services. And I think that's the thing too. When we call on people, it's not always asking. for a donation.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just, hey, we want to let you know what's happening.
Yep.
And there's no hard ask. And I think because we're building those relationships, when the ask does come, people are more likely to say yes because we're maintaining a relationship. It's not
Mm.
just calling on people once a year to open up their checkbook. So that makes a difference too.
Yeah, and from a business standpoint, more times than not, you're just waving at people, "Hey, we're still here. Want you to know we're interested in your business. Here's what we have going on." And it's okay because if you call me every month with an ask, I'm like, "Oh," it's like campaign season. "Hey, would you care to donate to" No. So, but again, from a business standpoint, just a monthly newsletter, a pop into their office, "Hey, I was in the neighborhood, thought I'd pop in," and everything, just I love those waves at people. Just, "Hey, here's what we have going on." So,
Yeah.
I like that.
And to let people know that we're thinking about them
Yep.
outside of an ask, I think makes a big difference. People then feel seen
Yeah.
and valued.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine, though, this is also pretty impactful on your kids as they grow up, just to see giving back and helping, and I'm sure they're helping you at events and they see the smiles on people's faces.
Yeah, and I mean, before we moved to New Bern, my husband and I were in full-time ministry with the Salvation Army up north. So this is a part of our family DNA where we're always giving back, always serving. Kids have grown up in the church and finding ways to be a part of things. And even last week they had a couple teacher work days, and the girls were bored at the house because there's only so many hours of Netflix one
Yes.
can watch, and so they helped restock the pantry, and did a little bit of work in the warehouse. So then being able to see, how we're helping
Mhm.
and do things in a practical way. That's what I like about the organization too, where my kids are more than welcome to join the mission, and their tasks
Mhm.
for an 8-year-old. That's my youngest. We've got volunteers as young as 8, all the way up to probably 98 in the
Nice.
organization. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that from a kid's standpoint also, just adult interaction in a casual setting, so they're not being peppered with questions like we do to little kids, like, "Hey, how's your day? Do you like school?" Blah, blah, they get tired of questions, but just, your little one does some work and somebody there pats them on the back, say, "That's a huge help for me, thank you."
Yeah. Yeah. It's really rewarding.
All right, so I also, like to ask guests on the show that are married. So your husband's name is Mark,
Yep.
and, I ask you, how did you 2 meet, and do you both tell the story the same way?
Um, He'll usually defer to me if we're in a group setting to tell the story. But pretty typical, it'll be the same story. So like I said, we were in the Salvation Army in ministry before we moved south. And so we met, actually it was a preview weekend. So the Salvation Army has their own kind of seminary. And so there's a preview weekend. I was a student, he was a prospective student, and we both had mutual points of contact, and it was actually another couple. Both of the members of that relationship said, "Oh, and I guess it was separate. One had said about me, who she'd be perfect with, and then I guess they had said it to him at some point. Um, and we just crossed paths a couple times during that weekend. I didn't know I was being set up. Um, I I had no clue,
Yeah.
and by the end of the weekend, I guess I had caught his eye, the Friday night of the weekend. I was on the worship team, and apparently I was just a little bit more physical in my, singing than the other gals, and he'll tell you that that's what caught his eye on Friday night. By Sunday afternoon, he found me, I was doing, I think I was vacuuming or something because I was a part of the cleanup team because I was a student. Um, and this was in the days of AOL Instant Messenger.
Yes.
And so he just hands me this piece of paper, and it had his instant messenger name and his regular name. And then he just handed it to me and walked away.
Wow.
And I said, don't you need something from me? He's like, no, I know how to find you. Um, And, then it was a Super Bowl weekend. He's a Patriots fan. Um, and so they were in the Super Bowl that year. That was 2007. 8? No.
They were in
Yeah.
so many, yeah.
Yeah, the one of the years that they but I don't think they won that year.
They
I
lost
think
to the Giants.
they lost, and so that was what I had messaged him because I guess we did a prediction earlier that weekend about what the score was gonna be, and I jabbed him about, "Hey, what about your prediction?" And his team it was a good thing his team lost that year, though, because I think if they hadn't lost, I might not have reached out. And yeah.
Ah.
And then by that fall, we were engaged, and yeah, so that was 2008 because by that fall, we were engaged, and a year and a half later, we were married, 2009.
Alright, so hang on a sec. Football is played in the fall. Oh, the
Well, this was
Super Bowl was
the
okay,
Super
so
Bowl was
January. Gotcha, okay,
so
alright.
February, yeah.
Alright, so where was the actual first date?
So in Nanuet, New York, so Rockland County, um, big mall there. He was so it was a long distance relationship. He was in Connecticut and I was in New York. But it was only about a 2-hour drive because everything is much closer in the
Mhm.
north than down here. So you can span states in a matter of hours, where here
Yeah.
doesn't happen. But we went to the mall and we ate and we went bowling and we went to the Lego store. So it was very,
Mm.
very, very low key.
So, who won the bowling? Do we remember?
No, probably
Okay.
him because I'm not very good at bowling, but I think that was just something to do. I
Yeah.
don't wasn't
Yeah.
very competitive at all. If you talk to Mark, he'll just remember that I was chatting with the group of ladies next to us, that I was just being the social
Yeah.
butterfly that I am. I was making friends with everyone else in the bowling alley.
So, when did you know this relationship was going somewhere?
With me, it was in the first month.
Okay.
Um, I knew that he was the one within that first month. It took him a little bit longer,
Mhm.
as it typically does with the men. Um, but he proposed Halloween weekend, so
In costume?
no, thank God.
But it'd be a much better story, wouldn't it?
I mean, it would well. I'd So the story is, so he'll tell you the engagement story is the I feel bad for him. He tried to propose to me 3 times in the same day. My friends I didn't have a car, so my friends brought me to meet him, because I was gonna spend the weekend with him and his family in Connecticut. I invited them to dinner,
Mhm.
and I didn't realize that he was gonna try to propose to me at dinner that night. So, opportunity 1 foiled.
Yep.
Um, then when we parted ways with my friends, then we were gonna go to his brother's house. His brother at this point was already married, so we were gonna go visit his brother and his wife. And he tried to propose on like their porch before we went in, and I saw it coming, and I said, "This is not happening right now. No, like." And I stopped him and I said, "This is not the memory that I want." Like I don't even know what else I said, but
Yeah.
poor guy. So I stopped his second proposal. But then later that night, I stayed in his room at his parents' house. Um, and then he was staying in another room, and it was right before bed. He was saying goodnight to me and knelt beside the bed. And the third time, I guess, is
Nice.
the charm,
There was not gonna be a 4th time, but a good thing it happened right on the 3rd time, right?
right? Because he probably would have returned the ring if I foiled any more of his attempts.
And none of your friends, nobody knew this was coming.
No,
So they couldn't yeah, alright.
yeah,
That's
no
even
one
better.
could head me off at, "Hey, Anne
Yeah,
Marie."
nice.
Yeah.
So how does a, young in-love couple leave the friendly confines of the snowy North to come down to New Bern?
We had vacationed here, a
Ah.
couple times in Fairfield Harbor and fell in love with the area.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the second time we were here, I had just made the comment, "Wouldn't it be nice to retire here?" Um, the Lord had other plans. Coworker and colleague and friend of mine, from our Salvation Army days actually came to New Bern to take over religious community services. They had left the Salvation Army,
Mhm.
change of career. And so we started seeing posts on social media of their life here. And we said, "Oh, we know where they are." Because we had vacation here. We had seen pictures of like the New Bern Bears
Mm.
and the Pepsi store. And then it was during COVID that we realized we needed a change in our career. And so we made the decision to leave full-time ministry and had reached out to that friend, asked him for prayer. And he said, yeah, I'll pray for you, but I can do you one better. I might have some positions here. And he was in a place that he really wanted to formalize the organization and bring in individuals that had more professional experience in the nonprofit world. Um, and we had made a comment a couple years prior, hey, wouldn't it be great to retire in New Bern? So now we just get to live like vacation all year long. We don't have to wait till retirement.
I like that.
Yeah.
So what was the best thing about growing up in Exeter, Pennsylvania?
Um, I could walk to my high school.
Okay.
Um, that because my high school was grade 7 through 12,
Mhm.
so I had a lot of freedom. I walked to school, but I was probably no surprise to anyone that knows me. I was in all the activities. I was in
Yes.
student council and drama and all the things. So, just having that freedom, similar to like being able to walk downtown New Bern.
Mhm.
Anytime I wanted to be at the high school, I could. So I just loved that freedom and autonomy that I had well before I could drive, where I was just, if I wanted to be at an event, I just walked myself there. Yeah, and it was just a quaint town. It was just really good people. Great place to grow up.
And what part of the state is Exeter?
So Northeast PA, so about 2 hours north of Philly.
Okay.
Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, right off of 81.
Does that make you, Eagles? What sports how do you line up if you do?
So I should identify as a Phillies girl, but my dad was always a Steelers fan.
Mhm.
And so we were a Steelers household. And then ironically, when I went to my undergrad was in Pittsburgh. So I went to Pitt and so got to experience Steel City for 4 years. And so, yeah, so if I had to pick a team, although I don't watch football, I'm a Steelers girl.
I always like to ask my, friends from up north, how many times did you jump off your roof into a snowbank?
Zero.
Aw.
I know, yeah, that's very disappointing, I know.
I'm sure you were asked to do that by your friends who did it, right?
I don't think no.
Okay.
I don't even remember having any friends that did it unless maybe I don't know if the snow was never deep enough or the roof
Yeah.
was too high. I don't maybe it was too much of a liability. A lot of sledding though.
Okay. Oh, good sledding, I bet, right?
Yeah, lots of hills
Half
because
half a
I grew up
mile
in
down
the
a road?
valley.
Yep.
Yeah,
It
so
the problem was the walk back up. The ride down was
mhm,
wonderful. It's like, "Oh, now I gotta walk back up."
exhausting,
Yeah. And,
especially with snow
would
hands.
so did somebody el were you guys trying to jump on each other's sleds and two-person trip down or one
Oh,
person,
yeah,
one sled?
and the sleds are never big enough, or you
No.
have the disc sled that, yeah, or trying to do a makeshift sled.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
So I went to school at the University of Tennessee, and Knoxville is in a bowl. It'll snow in the Smoky Mountains all around Knoxville, but by the time that weather gets to Knoxville, it sits so low it turns into ice.
Ooh,
So we got a lot of ice when everybody else got snow, but we had a couple of good hills off the main drag in Knoxville, and it was right near my dorm, and so when we knew classes were being canceled, everybody went to this one hill, and you just kinda hung out, and so my question to you, I'm gonna tell you the best thing I saw going down the hill, which leads me to ask you what's the best thing you saw going down the hill? So one night, there were just I'm sure these were drunk, uh, males that were students at Tennessee. And all of a sudden, 2 guys bring out a recliner. Yeah. And so they're at the top of the hill, and there's always that one guy goes, "I got the first run." So they sit him in the recliner, and everybody's dying laughing. They get us do a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and his 2 buddies push him to start going down the hill, and he got maybe 10 or 12 feet from when they pushed him, and he just pulled the arm back and just laid out, back in the chair like that, and all of a sudden, it just started ticking to the left. There's nothing he could do, and he just went knees over elbows when he hit the curb, and the chair stopped, and he just got up doing the Rocky, it's like it was one of the best things I've ever seen somebody go down
gosh.
ice on. So what did you guys used to do to make a sled?
I mean, thinking about college and when we'd have snow days, I think the most adventurous people got were taking the lunch trays out of the
Yep,
cafeteria.
yep.
That No, I don't remember anyone bringing out any lazy boys. No, we
Yeah.
were.
That was a classic movie. I've not
That's
seen it since.
crazy.
So
Yeah.
I always like to give public service announcements. Some are worth a penny and some aren't. So for those of you listening that are getting ready to go to college, and you may be going somewhere where it snows, App State or somewhere where it snows, right? You get the tray from the cafeteria in the fall because they're not guarding the door. Don't be stupid freshmen. And the first Tuesday of the winter quarter, you walk out with a tray because there's somebody standing there at tray, go back in. So in the fall or in the spring, get your tray because they're not looking for people stealing trays.
Yeah, because you're eating lunch outside, you know?
That's my public service announcement. So do it when they're not, when they least expect it. So but, yeah, those were fun. I mean, we had a blast. There were a bunch of hills in Knoxville, and I laughed one time. I saw a guy just fall and he must have broken, it looked like he broke about 30 bones in his body, so when he slipped on the
Oh,
ice. I could not have laughed any harder till about 3 weeks later. I did that, and I've not laughed at anybody since.
that's funny.
So it hurts. Um, Salvation Army, that was right out of college?
Yeah, I went to school right out of college.
Yeah.
After yeah, right in the fall after I graduated.
And the role there was what?
So in the Salvation Army, if you're not familiar or other people aren't familiar, our role was in a ministry role. So I went to school for 2 years and got my ordination. So became a minister. And then because of the type of work that the Salvation Army does, it's really frontline social work ministry of, helping with food and rent and all of those kind of insecurities that I'm helping with still today. But yeah, so having a congregation, but really also making sure people's emergent needs were met.
Yeah. And that's in your blood, isn't it? Good,
Yeah,
good.
as
Uh,
long as I can remember.
do what now?
From as long as I can
Yep.
remember. Yeah,
Good, good.
always been a helper.
So we've learned that you sing. Can I assume you dance too? Because that's what caught Mark's eye, or are you just a singer?
Just a singer, and I guess it was however I had my hand on my hip and the way I was holding the microphone, you know. So no
Okay.
no choreography. But I like to think that maybe I have some rhythm. I, enough to catch my husband's eye. So
There you go.
enough rhythm for that.
Yeah, that's all that matters. Does he remember the song you were singing?
No.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you two have 3 kids.
Hmm.
Who's more like mom? Who's more like dad?
Um, I think our son is probably more like Mark. So Caleb is 14, a freshman in high school. And then our middle child, Allie, is 11, and she is definitely my child. She has the nickname Mini Me.
Yes.
So she looks like me, but she also acts like me.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the youngest, Evelyn, is just
Mm.
she's her own person. Definitely marches to the beat of her own drum.
Yeah, we have 2 boys, and our youngest son, Cameron, is, I mean, you can tell we're related. And every now and then I'll be chatting with him and something funny will come up and I'll look at him and I go, just want to tell you one thing, we're a lot alike in a lot of ways. And I just want to tell you, A, I'm sorry, but B, you're welcome. So,
Yeah, I can relate to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been one of our connections. Like, yeah, he'll do something that his wife will say something to him like, why'd you do that? And I'm sitting over there going, I'd have done the same thing. So, and, and then we get laughing. All right. So 2025, what kind of goals do you guys have for RCS?
I think to continue to do what we do well. So like I mentioned earlier in our time together, it's really about fighting food insecurity and homelessness. So continuing to offer the best programs and services that we can to make sure people can experience as little food insecurity and homelessness as possible. But then I think because we're a homegrown nonprofit, we're our only branch, not like a national
Mm,
organization. Because of that, we have the freedom to expand programs and services as we see needs arise. So one thing that we've added that we're excited to offer is a recuperative care wing. So for individuals experiencing homelessness, should they have maybe an illness or an
mm,
injury, maybe a minor surgery, nothing that requires hospitalization, but they definitely don't need to be out in the elements and not in some proper housing. So saying, okay, we have sheltering programs, but what about those individuals that need some kind of recuperative care? Being able to offer a section of our campus where someone can recuperate. So, yeah, I think just making sure we do what we do well and then figuring out where there's other opportunities to meet needs in those similar areas. And continuing to let people know what we're doing and how they can get involved and how they can support us because we're really a volunteer based organization. We rely heavily on individual donors and businesses. We do get grants, but a lot of our support is from churches and the community members. So yeah, that's what 2025 is looking like so far.
So if somebody watching the show is wanting to go to work for a nonprofit because
Yeah.
they, like you, it's in their blood, but they don't have a job with a nonprofit yet, what's how about a nugget or two on how they should approach that?
Yeah. So one idea I've had for a long time, especially with people that have professional skills and want to help nonprofits, consider contracting yourself out. Um,
Ooh, I like that.
Oftentimes, I'm very fortunate that we have our organization is large enough to support administrative positions like mine. But it's not often that a nonprofit can support a chief communications officer. Usually, the things that I'm doing, it's something that a lot of executive directors are doing, or someone who's doing client services. So I think if someone has a skill set that would be beneficial to a nonprofit, I would highly recommend contracting yourself out as whether it's if you're great at writing and want to take a stab at writing grants to
Mhm.
help an organization get funded. If you're really good at events and can help in that regard, consider reaching out to a nonprofit and saying, "Hey, I have this service. Um, I'd love to offer it." And even, offering at a discounted price. Maybe you're not going to charge as much as you would a regular client, but figuring out a nonprofit rate. I think about my friend who does websites. We probably would have gladly paid him for his website design. I always try to ask for services for free at first, because people can't give you what you don't ask for.
Yep.
Um, but if you see a website that needs updating, and I'm thinking of all the areas that I'm particularly geared towards when it comes to marketing communications, but a lot of nonprofits need handyman skills, but they can't afford to have someone on staff. So yeah, if someone wants to get involved professionally with nonprofits, I'd go that route because you could probably you're doing social media management.
Mhm.
Maybe one nonprofit is obviously not enough to support you, but you could probably build a book of business using several nonprofits, and that gets you connected to a cause bigger than yourself, but using your professional skills and experience, um, and taking a burden off of a nonprofit where they're doing a lot of that stuff themselves,
I
in between all the other things. Yeah.
I like that because it's an easier barrier of entry in because they'll take, hey, yeah, we could use 10 hours a week and it won't break their budget or anything like that. And then working into stuff. I like that.
Yeah.
If somebody who has never really volunteered for a nonprofit before, how do they go about finding kind of the one they'd like to volunteer for?
Sure. It really just depends on what my biggest recommendation is what is a cause that is close to you. And oftentimes when people volunteer here, it's because maybe they were at a point where they didn't have enough food on their table.
Mhm.
Or maybe they were a recipient of our services or a similar organization. So I think finding a nonprofit whose mission aligns with your personal values is the most important thing, because any of us can do tasks. If I were to invite you on campus right now, there's probably food that you can sort.
Mhm.
Um, but if that's not something that you're passionate about, then it's just a task. So never sign up to volunteer when it feels like another duty or obligation. Find something that you can see the impact, even if you're not working frontline with the population that they're serving, something that you're passionate about. And one good resource in a lot of communities is the United Way. A lot of times you can find multiple volunteer opportunities through the United Way. Um, Another networking, chamber events are great. If you want to just meet nonprofits, go to networking events. I don't know how many other BNI chapters have a nonprofit seat filled, but
Couple.
just getting to know the nonprofit landscape and then figuring out how you can help. And it's not always on campus too. There's always opportunities with every nonprofit. Like we're doing one right now. Crema Brew is, to bring it kind of full circle. um Crema Brew is doing a peanut butter and jelly drive with a local church, where a local church is trying to raise 1,000 jars of peanut butter and 1,000 jars of jelly in the month of February. And so I think people knowing that, they can make an impact without having necessarily being on campus of an organization. So, but find what you love and then find who else is doing what you love and partner with them. That's my biggest piece of advice.
There you go. I like that. All right. We've been putting Anne Marie's phone number up on the screen during the show. If you have any questions, if you're in the New Bern area, Craven County, and just want to learn a little bit more or volunteer, if you want, you see what kind of conversation you're going to get, you are going to make a friend real quick. So give her a call, because it's just an endless need for resources, be it time or money.
Yeah.
And so you can help them a bunch, and you will be very well taken care of. So, Anne Marie, enjoyed it very much. Again, love the stories, and your passion for the nonprofit world just comes out real quick and real strong. So it's always good to hear.
Yeah, and if you're not in the New Bern area and you want to learn how to navigate nonprofits in your community, don't feel like you could only reach out if you're in the New Bern Craven County. I'm more than happy to chat with people that are outside of my geographical network, because there are people that need your help in the triangle and all the way to the coast and in between, that I'd be happy to find who you should connect with if you want me to help you navigate that journey.
Very nice. And you two can jump on a Zoom call drinking coffee. And if they're smart, they'll wear a Steelers jersey, so they'll be closer to your heart from the very beginning, right?
Sounds good.
So, all right, Anne Marie, thanks very much for being on the show. And we will see everybody next time on Capital to the Coast BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by StreamingGear.com and DeltaForce.net.